Hello, BookTube. Well, as you can see, I have my friend Sam here. He's a fellow book critic, writes for L.A. Times, Las Vegas Times.
I used to write for the Las Vegas Weekly.
The Las Vegas Weekly.
I used to do that.
And I thought I would do a Zoom chat with him, get him in here to talk about the year we've had. Good Lord.
Did something happen?
What a year. Good Lord. I'm curious to know, last March, more than a year ago, what were the first changes that you saw? You have a different scenario than I do. You are sort of institutionally protected from the tsunami of book review copies in the mail.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, there had to be what was the moment when you realized, oh my, this is a serious change?
We're talking about
last March.
We're talking about books. We're talking about
books. Yes.
Well, I knew it was
the sob stories that aren't about books are endless as well, but we just concentrate on books.
We did sort of know it was coming a little bit. We could, by about February, I think everyone knew something was going to happen. There was some point when it became clear that they were going to start shutting things down.
The newsroom.
Yeah, everything. But definitely the newsroom. And people were discussing it. In fact, in the newsroom, they started doing prep, where they started just sending people home and seeing if they could put out the paper while everybody was at home before they officially shut everything down. So I was still going. I would go to the office once a week, bring a tote bag, do all the sorting of books like you do here when the books come in here.
Or at the Christian Science Monitor.
Right.
Same thing every week.
Right. And then I would organize them by month. I had shelves, and then I would take a tote bag full of books that I needed for that. So what I did was, for the last 2 visits, I took 2 tote bags, and I took a lot. I took or more. I took as much stuff home as I could. So I was sort of protected for the first 2, maybe 3 months of it, and I had some time to work into an entirely electronic, digital galley future, and then the publishers knew that was coming too. They sent off as much stuff as they could, but then after that they stopped going. They were only sending books electronically also. Yeah. So there was a few months where I still had stuff from the pre-closure days that I could work with. Although I didn't have the finished copies, usually I just had the galleys, and then you would have to get the PDF, the finished PDF of the book.
And you remember the years before then, when a publicist would contact you and say, are you interested? And as a sort of a footnote at the end, they'd say, oh, and by the way, an electronic copy is also available. You just ignored it. Little did we guess.
Well, it is sort of amazing, because I only started getting any electronic copies. Maybe occasionally I would get a PDF, but the services they use are called NetGalley, and another one is called Edelweiss. And just different publishers use, and there are ways that basically you request or you're automatically approved to download either not a PDF, but it can go for Adobe Reader, and often it can go straight to your Kindle if you have a Kindle account, which is, you kind of have to have that. But I only really started doing that regularly, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago. I mean, even then I wasn't doing it very much, but I would do it if I was going to travel for a few weeks, and I didn't want to have to pack a suitcase with 15 books. But I only began doing that maybe 3-4 years ago. So, and it was, even then, it was extremely, it was all very rickety and sort of half-hearted. Like, publishers they didn't have it. You would put in a request, and they didn't seem to have anyone monitoring the requests.
Yes.
So a request would just sit there, and then you would have to send a physical email saying, I put in a request, can somebody approve the request? So it was sort of a multi-part process. They were extremely not
NetGalley could also be somewhat obscure in their qualifying rationale.
Right, sometimes you were declined,
Yeah, sometimes you do. And I would want it to say, well, I reach a large number of readers. You reach 10 times that number of readers. Why would you decline that? The whole point is, why would you decline anybody? Is actually my question. But I don't know how man-hour intensive it is to put these things out.
And Edelweiss, now you can get it to go to your Kindle, but I think originally you had to have this weird reader called an Adobe Reader.
Yes.
It's horrible.
I
It's
have stayed away from it
worst.
because of that.
And it gets very slow as you scroll, and it's all, if you scroll too fast, it like can't handle it, and it just shuts down, and then you have to pull it up again. So it's horrible. So as of, I don't know, 3 years ago, this stuff was really just beginning. Publishers are, they're book people, so they're not going to be technologically sound or savvy or even interested. They'll do it because they feel that it's sort of necessary, but they were starting to just get the hang of it when all this began, and obviously there would have been a huge learning curve. But if this had happened 5 years ago, I don't know. There was no technological infrastructure.
There was no infrastructure, no.
I mean, maybe they would have just had to figure it out, but I mean, can you trust publishers to figure it out? They would have had to rely on Amazon, I suppose.
So, did you have a learning curve as well for reading ebooks, working with ebooks?
The way that yes, definitely. I had a learning curve in terms of not the reading. I mean, reading is just reading, but you have to take notes and annotate, and then you have to review your notes, and you have to figure out different ways of doing that. And previously, when it was in a book, I sort of, you learned how to flip through a book to find your own notations. You just had a sixth sense of doing that. It was very slow and very clunky for me figuring that out on a Kindle Paperwhite or on my laptop. So that was slow. But the really difficult thing for me, and the thing I still haven't figured out, in here, in your apartment, there's bookshelves everywhere. And if you want to get a lay of the land of what your books are, you just open your eyes and you look at your shelves.
Yes.
And if you need to organize those books in some way, you do so, and then you have this mental organization of your books. But the thing that I really have not figured out, and maybe your viewers have figured it out because they have worked on it, how do you organize your ebooks?
There are 80 million ways to do it. A lot of people that have watched this channel have been dealing ebooks lovingly, exclusively, for the better part of a decade.
And they create folders,
shelves, all kinds of. I haven't figured it out either, but they're all. I've lost track of how many times I've had to just go to the search function on my iPad and say, "Do I have this book?"
Cannot remember. Yeah, exactly. I often get like 3 or 4 copies of the same thing because I just keep requesting it because I can't remember if I have it, and then I have to. And if you have a little Kindle, you have to scroll through it a pretty long time to see all the stuff that's on there. So I have totally failed in that respect, in the organizational respect, which is an important aspect if you're trying to mentally juggle a lot of different titles. So that's been. If I could, give myself 3 days that had nothing to do, I would really try to become more proficient.
The one
organizing
sort of superstitious thing that I haven't been able to adapt to, I've had to do all that same adapting. But the one thing I haven't been able to do, I still need a print finished copy to feel comfortable with my final filing.
Yeah.
It just doesn't feel right to just say, all right, I'm ready to file from an electronic file that some kid could alter.
That can be changed at any time. Yeah, I know.
I still haven't been able to acclimate myself to do that. I need a physical printed copy. And even at the worst of this pandemic, there were still people that were willing to send those.
Right.
What I'm wondering about, what do you think is going to happen in the future?
Are they just going to stop doing physical copies?
Are they going to send people back to the warehouses to ship books? Are publicists going to go back to their offices?
Well, I do think they'll make fewer of them because it costs a lot of money for publishers to make these bound galleys.
It costs a lot of money to rent apartments, office space too, and they know they don't need people in there anymore.
Yeah,
they know that now.
Yeah, so they can cut that down to a bare minimum. I mean, I think what most of them are doing now is they'll just go in once a week or something like that. So
what about your paper? They've learned as well how little they need people to show up.
They're still not in the office, to my knowledge. I mean, I don't.
That's more than a year.
Yeah, so it's a very long time, and
are they still paying for that space?
I think maybe some people are, but the
book
book
section. $1 million a month.
Yeah, well, either they own the space. It's,
okay. Actually, so does the Monitor.
It's a Rupert Murdoch thing.
Yes. I'm the billionaire tyrant who owns this network.
He's not negotiating rents with some New York slumlord. there might be some people going in, but I think it's on a sort of a needs-be basis. I don't think the book people are considered essential workers.
No.
So they're all home. So another weird thing is I haven't seen them. I haven't seen any of my bosses or any of my colleagues.
Or the people, just the people.
Yeah, or the people.
It's a little element, but you really do miss it.
Yeah.
When I would go to my book section in the newsroom, I got to see these bright, fresh faces all working on their stories.
Yeah,
I haven't had that interaction at all.
Yeah, well, it was always nice to, when you had that big stack of things that I was going to take home, to show it to someone else, and if someone said, "Oh, that one's interesting," at least you had some additional feedback. Otherwise, you're just in this very narrow, I mean, as much as I feel averse to it, in this case, social media has really been helpful. I've been even more reliant on Twitter, just following book people on Twitter, being like, "Oh, I'm excited about this galley coming out," because I need more voices telling me what. Otherwise, I would just have to do what Steve tells me to do.
Other book critics have done that. Some, in years past, have made a career out of it. It is much easier. But there's that whole self-esteem thing. Oh, look at the baby. She hasn't had guests in so long. I used to get the same thing from people, and not quite the same thing. I didn't need anybody's feedback on what was interesting or not in my stack. But sometimes people would come over to the stack that I was going to put in a tote bag of my own, and they'd say, "Are you going to be mean to any of these people?" "Oh, wait, if you're going to be mean to them, I don't want to know." And I never did say, but I wanted to say, "Honey, it's the Christian Science Monitor. I'm not allowed to be all that mean." I can't rip their guts out. Believe me, I can be a lot meaner. Oh, baby, what are you doing? Oh, goodness.
But I think we do also have to acknowledge that our jobs, maybe more than anyone else's, even though there have been these superficial and very specific alterations and changes, they haven't changed that much, though, really. I mean, we're still... books are still coming out, and we're still reviewing them, and they're still appearing. So
yeah, did you have the spasm of shame? How little your life was upended?
People ask me, and I go, "It's the same thing." I don't,
yeah. Frida is trying to bother both of us at the same time. That's amazing. Kind of amazing. Hi, baby. Why don't you just sit down?
Do you think? I mean, it's true that it's kind of a fine thing in terms of how recent electronic versions of books are, but books are such this old technology that isn't there something like they're better, they can better withstand crises around the world than other things, just because they've been through everything.
Yeah, but that doesn't matter how good or old a technology they are if bookstores are closed.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's like you say, if this had happened before all of this technology, we would have been absolutely screwed. You and I would have been at the front of the line of people saying, "My whole life was ended by this plague."
If there had been no way to buy books online.
Or no way to read them electronically.
Yeah.
Nothing like that. If this had happened 20 years ago,
right,
what would have happened to book coverage? It would have simply stopped.
Well, yeah, it would have been sort of an avant-garde of chapbook writers would have emerged, and people would have been sort of
but instead,
dropping them off on your doorstep. And
it looks like this is easing. It looks like the situation is brightening.
I think so. Just
in time for another plague. You are going to have another plague, aren't you, later this year? Baby.
Do you mean all the big titles that are coming out?
Yes, indeed. So you gave me a thumbnail of the apocalypse that's coming this way.
And it can't be coincidental. I mean, I bet a lot of books were held last year.
Were held over, right.
They
so you think half of those things?
They didn't want to publish all these big-name writers when there was no bookstores.
Baby, do you want to get down? Is that what you're trying to do? Oh, God. The only upside I can say here is that if Lucy had been crawling all over you like this, you'd need medical help. so at least there's no great pain involved. When Lucy used to lay on you, you knew it. Your spleen would start to rupture.
I mean, you have to say it's not a coincidence that Jonathan Franzen's new book is coming out exactly when everything's going to be opening.
No, I don't think it is a coincidence at all. The list that you gave me, the list is just enormous of fiction releases alone, that are any one of which would ordinarily command a whole season. Instead, you've got 10 or 20 of them. You'll have to weigh in. Surely you will weigh in on Franzen. Surely that plum falls to you.
Probably. We'll see. We'll see. I've done his last two, though, so we'll see. They're all kind of the same.
This one claims to be very different. And the start of, what is it, the first book in a series of 7 or something like that? Like he's going to live that long?
Do you think anyone will marry a woman who turns out to be a lot like his mother?
I was also going to make a female-related joke. I was going to say he's going to experiment with giving his female characters up to 2 dimensions this time. I don't know if he can manage that. But who were some of the others that you named?
Yes, let's.
Nosgard?
Nosgard has a non-My Struggle novel. Lauren Groff is a good writer, has a novel. Comtoiben has a novel, and it's another novel about a writer who did The Master about Henry James, and this is called The Magician, and it is about. Who is it about? It's terrible, I can't remember. It's easy to find out. It's about another novelist, so that'll be big.
I guess if we want to find out who it's about, all we have to do is figure out who David Lodge is writing about.
Yeah.
That's got to be the ultimate nightmare of his life now. He's got to be thinking, I'm so afraid of this guy. I'm so afraid he's going to write a novel about the exact same subject at the exact same time that I am. It's going to happen again.
Right. Well, he wrote about Wells. There was pretty much no chance that Colm Toyman was going to write about Wells.
But what about, didn't you mention nonfiction work from Paul Auster?
Paul Auster has a biography of Stephen Crane, of all the curious things. It's so unlikely that it seems interesting.
And I mean, I'm sure it wasn't on his mind, but as a cynical gambit, that guarantees him a million reviews. No one is going to ignore that. It's just too odd.
Yeah, for sure. How many really big name novelists write just a regular sort of full dress research biography? I don't know what it's.
And also how good they are too. It's a risk, right? I mean, what's his name got a lot of abuse for Koba the Dread.
Oh yeah.
Was that Martin Amis? Yeah, he got a lot of abuse for that.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff. Elizabeth Strout has another novel. Atticus Lish he published it with a really small indie press, but it was a big splash. So now he's with a big press.
I wonder if the same thing will happen with nonfiction. I haven't actually checked.
Probably.
But I have to think that probably the same reasoning applies. That authors just had their books pushed back.
I think so. I think they've just been waiting on everything.
Or decided to strike while the iron is hot. The new Adam Two's book is about the pandemic. So.
Yeah, and then there'll be all of that,
Yes, that'll be my daily work. I've been trying to convince a few editors that it is overkill, it is a tsunami, but it is also the most important historical event in any of our lives. So it's maybe warranted that there are going to be 20 books every month on this thing. It's just a question of we shouldn't ignore them or pick only one.
Yeah. But a new translation of The Plague is coming out in October. Speaking of.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, was that long in the work though, or is that just the ultimate opportunism?
I think they started it as soon as the or sometime. I don't know. I don't know the story, but it'll come out in the. Yeah.
Who knows what it'll be like? I mean, I know it's a question that everybody's asking, but I'm wondering how much the world will snap back to what it was before now that it knows it doesn't need to. I'm honestly wondering about that. In both our cases, our main venues own their property.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't they have people back in?
I think they will. But I do also think they'll be much more flexible and much more, creative about how they do things.
I can't imagine the business world in on Wall Street and whatnot. I can't imagine those companies rationalizing paying those rents for jobs they don't need people to show up for.
Yeah, I know.
The all sorts of technology is available to keep workers accountable, to keep them in touch with their managers. Why would they ever need to go back?
Yeah.
It'll be curious to know. So to finish up, what are you reading? The stereotypical question. What are you reading?
I'm reading the Library of America edition of Elizabeth Spencer, which is just about to come out. I think it's already just been reviewed in the New Yorker, and it has 2 of her novels, and it has A Light in the Piazza, her
Had you encountered her before?
A lot of her stories. I had never read her before. Well, I think I'd read a story or two from the New Yorker she was in, but
I can't remember.
No, but I had never read her longer fiction. No.
Did you do the Library of America, Octavia Butler?
No.
That's in the new New Yorker.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No, I didn't. No, they have a science fiction guy.
Oh, right.
Yes, I think he did it.
It's speculative fiction. Hashtag speculative fiction. I just finished Meet at Gettysburg.
Ah.
And I was thinking, actually, I was on a dog walk last night with Frida, and I actually thought how fun it would be if our respective publishers just did a Freaky Friday, and I had to do Walzer, and you had to do Meet at Gettysburg, and I would be like, and you would be like, because you don't read a book like Meet at Gettysburg for any of the things that you are the best judge of in the reviewing world. No, all the things that you judge better than anybody in your column every week are not done. They aren't. It's not like they're done poorly. They just aren't there. They aren't there at all. And all the things that I tend to judge are not done in fiction, especially contemporary fiction. Just
no, I would have to
happen at all.
I would have to lead with an anecdote of going to Gettysburg when I was a kid and there being a really good miniature golf course nearby. It's I think my strongest memory of all of this.
You went? You've been?
I have,
but
yeah.
It didn't make any historical impression.
I was young. Yeah, no, I don't remember. You take Route 97, Georgia Ave, all the way north, and it basically ends in Gettysburg.
So, are we going to intersect? Are there any books on the horizon that are... Every once in a great while, we will intersect. In fact, I have a really strong intersection question. There was a book just a couple of years ago, maybe a year ago, was it called The Outer Beach?
Yeah.
That you reviewed.
Yeah.
And so did I. It was about Cape Cod, and we both reviewed it.
Robert Finch.
Well, yeah, I think it was Robert Finch. And I have yet to see the paperback edition of that book. To see whether or not it is the ultimate collector's edition. The ultimate collector's edition of a book is a paperback on which we are both blurbed by name. Our blurbs occur all over the place, but on the same book with our names is rare. Very, very rare. The first time, I think, was Life After Life.
That's right. That's right. You were doing a lot more fiction.
Yeah. I think the Authors Union voiced a complaint. I think that's why I don't do it anymore. Or it might have been editors saying, well, we don't usually call things steaming heaps of garbage. And I remember those reviews vividly because I think we were talking when we were writing them. And you were going at the book as a work of literature, and I was saying, well, what about this plot line? And this character doesn't seem to remember one thing after another. This doesn't work as science fiction, which is what it was. But literary science fiction, front parlor science fiction, doesn't have to do world building. But I still don't know if we are on The Outer Beach together on the paperback, and I'm wondering if there's going to be something down the line. Just recently there was Viking did a new Penguin Classics came out with a hardcover Penguin Classics, very rare thing, of a new translation of Journey to the West.
Oh.
Of Monkey.
Yeah. But I read it.
Yeah, but I didn't.
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't get anybody to be interested in it. So that was almost an intersection. I'm wondering if something like that, is there like a big new translation coming down the pike that maybe we would... There's a new Lawrence Ellsworth of Dumas, but you might have done those to notice the series once, but you're not going to do every volume. I love them, so I'm doing every volume.
Yeah, I know. I've been looking at some of that stuff. I think I don't know. Pushkin Press collects does new translations. A lot of the Russians, like a bunch of Turgenev stories and Gogol stories. I don't know if this would do that.
If it was huge, I might. If somebody came out with a new translation of War and Peace.
Oh, there is one.
Or the Greeks. The Greeks, we would intersect there.
There's a Pivar Volokonsky, I want to say The Idiot.
No.
But there's a Pivar Volokonsky
already did The Idiot.
Something in the end of the year. I think it's a Dostoevsky, but
Oh my.
There's something like that.
Well, that could be it then. What have they not done by Dostoevsky?
Yeah, well, they do like one every year, but he's got a lot, so I don't think they've done them all. But
I thought, haven't they done all the major ones?
Yeah, I don't know.
I thought they did The Idiot.
Maybe. Check it. But dude,
I'll have to
there's
look and
one.
see. Absolutely.
Yeah, or we'll leave a comment or put it in. We have to correct all the errors everything I've said here has been wrong.
Because we're supposed to know this. It just happens to be our profession. But and of course, the chances for intersection is greater than ever, because I run a book section now.
Yeah.
So I don't have to wait for a random chance.
Yeah. You could do the new Colson Whitehead.
I'm not sure contemporary fiction goes over well with my readers, but a big translation of a literary classic, that would work. Oh, baby, what are you doing?
All right, so suggestions. Give us suggestions.
Yes, and one of you go to your bookstores and find a paperback of The Outer Beach. I want to know if I should be ordering a copy. If it has a rare 2 names on it. The venue is not good enough. You did it for the Journal. I did it for the Monitor. And that is, I believe, the last time that both of us, for our biggest circulation venue, have reviewed the same book. I think that's the last time. That was a while ago. So I'm getting the evil eye from Frida. I think she wants to come up here. Well, we'll wrap this up anyway. This has gone on long enough. Just a miscellaneous book chat for you. We'll see how it uploads and what it looks like. At least they got a lot of Frida footage, and that's all they care about. They don't care what we're talking about at all. And if I could head off some of the comments field, I don't want to hear any comments about why does his gray hair look so graceful and distinguished. Okay? Because either his looks crappy or both of us look distinguished. All right? Eyes on the prize.
I like how the fans have
yes. Has a David Ben Gurion effect. All right, so his gray hair is coming in more picturesque. So what? Big deal. Anyway, on that bitter note, I will wrap this up, and all the rest of you can just send prayers of sympathy because Sam has 10 hours of this to go. I'll see you soon, Book 2.